Hello and welcome. It's a Friday. We're back. I say that, but we weren't here last Friday for various reasons. So we'll just pretend this is last Friday, particularly because that was my birthday. So I get 2 birthdays out of it. So it's great. Happy birthday, me, for the second time.
Yeah, happy belated birthday.
And happy hello to Chase Carter and Wills. Hello.
Happy hello to you too, Matt Jarvis. And happy 1 week later birthday.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for being on this week. It's good to see you both.
That's all right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. For those who might be new to this podcast, we chat about board games. We chat about a bit of everything. We chat about the kind of latest headlines from this week, and we play our latest little game, which we've got coming up later on this episode, which will be is always interesting. It's always entertaining. They're mostly entertaining.
Can I just check? Nobody else is prepared for it, right?
I have done, like all things, I've done the minimal amount of prep to make it seem like I prepped for a long time.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, you make it until you can fake it. All right, let's get into it. If you're in the chat, hello, welcome. I say welcome. Thanks for joining us even on this Friday. Hope you're doing well out there. If you're in the UK, hope you're looking forward to a longer bank holiday weekend, the last hurrah of the summer.
Chase, do you know what that means?
It means I don't work on Monday. That's what it means.
That's the only thing that matters.
Cheers to that.
If you have any questions, we'll be answering some questions later on in this podcast, as we always do. So drop them in the chat. If you are listening to this on catch-up or on audio, you can drop us some questions to podcast@dicebreaker.com. We have some in, but we'll pick some more from the chat. If you just want to ask about anything, ask us about board games or ask us about whatever you want. We were chatting about music before we got in here, so at some point we might just make this a music podcast.
Yeah. Stream Montero.
We won't get into that again. We had enough of that on the stream yesterday where you were setting off people's robots in their home. Let's get into it, shall we? Chase, you haven't been on in a few weeks, so let's throw over to you. What have you been up to? You been playing anything? Been watching anything? Doing anything?
Oh man, yeah. I've been doing a little bit of everything. I'll start with the games I've been playing. The first one, which I wrote about on the site earlier this week, is Archives of Alexandria. It's a game by Will Jobst and Adam Vass over at World Champ Game Company. They work together pretty often. The last time they got together, they did Campfire, which I also wrote about on the site if you want to check it out. It's sort of like a horror game, but this one is specifically a 2-player game that uses your phones or some other device, anything that can access wikipedia.com, the internet's encyclopedia.
The internet's biggest music nerds.
The internet's own Wikipedia.
Yeah. Wikipedia internet as the, I guess, if we're going to use like the anime last name convention that people use. But so in Archives of Alexandria, both players are these two, they're called bibliotheques. You're like sort of like archivists on this ship that contains all of human knowledge. And it's sort of like a ship for posterity, hurtling through space. And it's become infected. There is a virus corrupting the ship, and all is lost, and you need to get out. And the way you do that is by trying to get, at the end of the game, make it to the same Wikipedia page. That's how you know that like the two have brought their keys to the escape pod and are able to like get out. Otherwise, you're just trapped on this ship for all eternity. The way this plays out is really interesting. Both players will start off on a random Wikipedia page. You just hit the random article.
I've got a random wiki page. Good to go.
Yeah, and so once you do that, you have to use the information on that Wikipedia page to sort of like role play or describe a scene of you running through the Alexandria. So whenever I played with my partner, I got like, it was called like the Muskrat 404. It was like an airline carrier that was invented back in World War II. And so I described a scene where like my bibliothèque got on this flying vessel and took off into the air over like a sea of data. And like the klaxons were drowned out by the sound of engines on whatever this thing was, trying my best to evoke a ship, an airline ship, something like that, without saying any of the words that are in the title. That is strictly forbidden. And you're like, okay, cool. So you just have to like describe this page. Except once you do that, both players have to then click a link on that page and continue forward. You're never hitting a close target. That target is always moving. And so when the next person does it, they have to describe their scene. And so every time you describe it, you have to make sure that you give enough information that your partner can sort of glean where you're going, but you can't be so exact that they just like go where you are and don't continue forward, because otherwise they're going to be 2 steps behind you. So it's this interesting dance about like not being too explicit, but understanding also like, how does your partner think, right? Like, it's like whenever you're playing any other cooperative game where there's hidden information like this, you need to sort of like try to sync up. You need to hit that drift so that you're both thinking the same thoughts. And then that would be okay if you get that, except there are 3 phases, and each phase, the number of links you have to click goes up.
Oh,
then you have to click 2 links. And in the 3rd phase, where it gets tense as heck, you have to click 3. Imagine trying to describe a thing and then hope that your partner in 3 links also ends up on the same page as you. It's frantic. There were multiple times where my partner and I like knew we were like within 2 links of each other. Like, I was describing the UN as like this like room of chairs all facing each other. There's like frustration in the air, stuff like that. And they're like, I could see them just like nodding their head vigorously. I'm like, okay, we got it. And then we ended up like at the end of it, they had New Orleans and I had communism or something like that. And we died in the ship. Anyway, it's a very fun game. It took about an hour to play. You don't need anything but like a coin or something to just sort of decide 50-50 who goes. And then 2 devices with internet to access Wikipedia. It's so simple, but the framing and the way that it deploys that hidden information to really like get the tension going as those phases really ramp up is just beautiful. It's simple but evocative, and I think like you don't have to know a whole lot about, you know, RPGs or playing anything to just really have a good time doing this. So yeah, that's one.
Amazing.
This sounds amazing. I'm also sat here racking my brain looking at
what did you get?
I'm looking at the Wikipedia page for Serbian footballer Bogdan Stemonkovic. And I have no idea where to go from there.
Oh man, I already learned that like some of the best things to do is to hit like countries or like, you know, big political entries, because you'll have just this wealth of links to click on. Like it's like an intersection with a lot of streets coming off of it. It gives you a lot of avenues to explore, but that can also be overwhelming. All right, so beyond that, I've also been playing. I feel like I'll leave Avatar Legends for you, Matt. I'm running that game for a couple people, you included, so we can talk about that when we get around to you. I've also been playing a game called Beyond the Rift. This I found, this was actually recommended to me by some readers and designers that I follow, because I was looking for a game that evoked Hollow Knight. I was watching some like this was a couple weeks ago. There were some big game announcements coming out, and I'm like, are they going to bring us Silk Song? Like, I'm always hungry for Silk Song news, the follow up to Hollow Knight. And so I was like, come on, guys, where are the tabletop games that show me playing Hollow Knight? I really want that experience. And someone recommended a game called Beyond the Rift, which is by D. Pennyway, I believe. And it's meant for 3 players, but can be played solo. And it describes like this. I mean, it is Hollow Knight in all but name, at least in the way that it's described. You are this hero called an Echo that can die and come back. They were already dead. They're sort of like a memory ghost in this place that is nothing but memory constructed. And you go down into the depths and you chart your discoveries. You come across these keys that will unlock doors to bring you deeper in. And all the time you are drawing a map on I got like a bullet journal, and I was drawing a map as I go into each place. You pick a card from like an oracle. Depending on the suit and what you draw, it describes what you come across. Sometimes there are dangers. Sometimes it's just an empty space where civilization used to be, and now it's nothing but it's echoes. And so you just have to like walk through this dark area. And it's really evocative of the tone of a game like Hollow Knight and other sort of those moody Metrovanias. I will say that it does get like if you're playing solo, it requires a lot of work and a lot of like mental strain on one person, because there's essentially 3 roles. There's like a storyteller, there's the adversary, someone who role plays like all the things you come across, and then the Echo itself, which is like the player character in something like Hollow Knight. And I like it. I like everything it's doing. I think it would just be a lot more interesting if I had 3 players to sort of split that mental load. So I'm going to continue picking away at it. But if you are also looking for something like Hollow Knight, try it out. I think it's wonderful. I think it would be a great moody way to like get into that. if you know of anything else that maybe allows me to just sort of explore and have fun, please recommend. I'm going to continue this sort of journey of finding the game that sells me Hollow Knight, but physically, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting because I suppose like there are elements of something like a Dark Souls alike in that kind of like crumbling civilization way, but
Yeah.
Hollow Knight isn't just Dark Souls with bugs. So yeah, that's
I do think like roguelite as a genre I think is really untapped when it comes to RPGs, because I love the idea of like throwaway PCs that like keep perishing, but you have this kind of overarching progression that they're all sort of sharing, and I don't think I've seen much of that. I think there's stuff where you have like you know, like a city or something that they're building as they go through it, almost like, you know, Frosthaven or something like that, right? Where it's like you're gradually improving the place that you're coming back to. But I don't really see, I don't see that a lot. I'm sorry for the cough that I still have in the RPG space, which I think is really untapped. And to be honest, I might just make something. So
yeah, I guess like Call of Cthulhu and some horror RPGs have more kind of fragile like player characters, but they don't have that progressive kind of like you've just replaced them if they.
Yeah, there aren't many games that I know of where your character is designed to die and come back again. You know, like there's ones in which like, oh, it's really hard and your character may die at any point, but then I haven't seen much framework in which the game is built around that and it's designed to be able to react to that sort of thing. Which I think would be really interesting. I did see for that sort of Hollow Knight vibe. There's a game that I was researching a while back that never made it into a video, which is a GM-less one. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but I think you have like exactly 4 players around a table, and then you play as a character. The person opposite you plays as like your antagonist, and the person to the left and right play as like, you know, like important characters in the story or something like that. And you keep rotating around each other's stories and like swapping roles as you play. You play as like sort of like almost like Arthurian knights, but in like a world of, you know, like the moon is the big bad or something, and like, you know, it's very cool. It's very thematic. It opens with like this massive poem. Like it's very very hench. But it's a really really cool game, and I wanted to give it a go. But it like has that vibe for me of like sort of doomed knights and like crumbling worlds with big adversaries that seem completely unattainable to defeat.
There were several games that were recommended to me. I'm sorry I cannot remember them, but if you check my Twitter, you can find them. I will continue to try them out. Yeah, I really am interested in kind of finding this, one, to scratch that itch, and two, I think, Wheels, you're right. These games exist, and I know I've come across them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that nothing's coming to mind. But I think that's just a really cool idea and feeling to explore in a physical game, like in a tabletop RPG.
So we just had a recommendation actually from Chris Longhurst in the chat. He says there's a game called Phoenix Dawn Command. And as a Phoenix, death is not the end of your story. So apparently you level up by dying. That's like the key mechanic, which I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Very like Hades vibes. Oh, the art is fantastic, actually. Give that a Google. It looks lovely. Might have a look around on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna add that. I'll add it to the list, and I'll give it a try. So let's see. Beyond that, I also am playing. I just got into this. I'll just talk about it a little bit. This might end up on the site if I really like it. It's this game called Sergia. It's by Cesar Capaco. I'm sorry if I'm getting your name wrong. A Brazilian developer. The tagline is a surreal fantasy experience, and it is going to be immediately sort of antagonistic to folks because it wants to break the sort of trend of productivity in playing a game where you have like a task, a goal, there is something you need to do. This is a game that really wants you. The first line is, this is a surreal game about the absurd of imagination. You draw a map using like 3d6s. Everything is sort of using 3d6s. You draw a map, you place this location, you use like sort of like this table of oracles to decide a sort of like story prompt, and then you just do stream of consciousness, sort of like poetic writing. It is meant to be like make as little sense as possible, sort of Dadaist description of where you are in this space and what you encounter, and then when you get to the end of like 2 paragraphs, ask a question based on what you found, and then use that question prompt, to further send you down the story. And then when you feel like you've gone far enough down, you get a little memento from these like pieces of abstract art, and you cut one piece out and you glue it to your totem, which is just this sheet of like boxes. And then you draw connections between those different pieces of like abstract art to create this, your totem, which is your safe place in this world where you sort of come to collect your thoughts. So the whole game is narrativizing this sort of like escape from like needing a task and a goal in RPGs, which is something that, especially when I'm playing solo games, I do tend to like rely on. Like, what is pushing me forward? What is the quest here? What is the thing I'm striving towards? And then I'll fill in the sort of gaps in between. This game really challenges you to just like throw all that in the garbage and just let the creativity spigot flow. And whatever comes out, that's what you work with. And it's beautiful regardless of how nonsense it may be, which is an interesting concept. And I think it's something I want to explore.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I was going to say, like, it's like in board games as well. I feel like there are open world board games, but they always have that sense of, at the end, you then just rack up your points. Like, I'm struggling to think of that many games that are just like truly open-ended and are kind of like, you're there for just the, like, just the journey, really, because it doesn't matter where you end up at the end. There are so many interesting open world things where it's like, oh, like Western Legends, you can go play poker, you can go, you know, hunt down bounties or rustle cattle. But then at the end, you still are pursuing victory points. So it feels like you say, there's always productivity kind of driving what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're not doing it just for the sake of doing it and seeing the experience.
Yeah. I mean, even in like story games and like solo RPGs, something that I know, Wheels, you just did a stream this week playing one that was incredible.
What Waits Beneath,
yeah.
Nevin Holmes.
Yeah, very good game. That was a good stream too. Folks should go check it out. But even in those games, like there is like a narrative end point and start point, right? You kind of know the arc of the story. In this, like it is just you walking around this sort of surrealist paradise and seeing what comes across. Like the play explanation is about walking into a cafe and there's a flamingo that insults the bartender in some way, and then tears fall from the sky, and then you walk out having had an experience and feeling a little bit better, and then you mark a flamingo on your map. And that's all just because like you just sort of like start from a place and just let your mind wander. And I tried it a little bit, and I will say, while I'm not sure I did anything great, I came out of it thinking differently about the game. And so I think if you are in a rut with story games, solo RPGs, or board games, as Matt said, give this game a try, because I think it will help clear the creative pipes, so to speak. You know, it shunts your brain into a new way of thinking about both creating a story and playing games that might be refreshing. So that's Sergia. You can find it. It's near the top on itch, I think, still, if you want to search like physical games there.
Yes. We've all played Wonderhome, right? Because I feel like I got some similar feelings from Wonderhome.
Yeah.
Kind of like you're saying, Chase, about Sergia. I appreciated the kind of open-ended storytelling nature of that, because you don't have like a fixed character. You can kind of take control of anyone, and it's just kind of like you're there for the world, and you can, I forget the name of the system or the format, the genre that it falls into, but it was the first one of those that I had played, and it was kind of similar to,
I think it's Belonging Outside Belonging.
That's
or No Dice, No Masters.
Yeah. And I think I personally struggled without the kind of more like conventional storytelling structure, because it was kind of like, what do I do? Like, what am I aiming for here? Like, it's almost like seeing everything, right, and being unable to make a choice, because at some point I just need someone to give me 3 options. And I really I enjoyed it, and I kind of really respected it. I think it's like a really well put together game. But I think for me personally, it was just very kind of it really kind of threw me off my axis in terms of what I understand by my experience of playing role-playing games. It was interesting. But
so that's all I've been playing. I've been going for a while. I got other stuff I've been watching and stuff, but we can get to other folks, so we can. I feel like I know this because I'm just not on here very often, but I always feel like, dang, Chase, you're talking so much.
No. You've not been on here with Alex, me, and don't worry.
It's a podcast. It's all talking.
So I guess to continue on, I also picked up, outside of the realm of tabletop and board games, I started playing Psychonauts 2, which just came out. I don't know if either of you are Psychonauts fans.
So I've played the first one up to like a certain point. You know, one of those games where you're just like, I got really far and then for some reason I quit, so I can't be able to start again. So I think I will just jump in at number 2 and just watch the recap.
Yeah, it's got a beautiful recap. You won't need to have played or remembered anything about Psychonauts.
Because I absolutely didn't play whatever it was, the Rhombus of Ruin or whatever.
Oh, the VR game? Yeah.
Yeah, is it a VR game? I don't know. Anyway,
it's a VR game.
Me and Matt were talking about this, but like the Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker of the series.
yeah, very much so. So yeah, I started that. I'm about 3 or 4 hours in. It's Psychonauts. Like, if you enjoyed that first game, it's more of that. It does feel at the beginning like a game that has been in development for 6 years. That first sort of introductory level is a bit slow in kind of giving you all of your tools and sort of like, how do I want to say this? Justifying the existence of a sequel. It was hard not to feel like, is this just going to be Psychonauts 1 again with a bit more polish, right? And where I am now, it's starting to open up and it's starting to do bigger and better things. It's starting to like really expand the creative potential of what a sequel could do. Like, you know, a Psychonauts made in 2021 could actually do. And so I think I'm interested. The characters are fantastic. Listen, Double Fine has always been really good about creating a really interesting cast of characters that are playing off each other. That's half the reason I play any Double Fine's games, is for that sort of like Schaefer-esque humor, which is always fun and never cruel, and just see the characters interact and be goofy. But I think it's starting to like actually introduce some like mechanical things and level design that is going to like really sell me on putting another, 10 to 20 to 30 hours, however much it takes this game to beat it. So I don't have any like final thoughts. I'm interested. It's on Game Pass, the best deal in video games right now. So like, honestly, like if you have it, or if you're thinking about getting Game Pass, that's all the reason you need. Just go try Psychonauts.
Look, I know we're not a video game website, but it continues to baffle me how many people have not bothered to just pick up Game Pass. I know, like, obviously there are people who are in financial situations where they can't afford it, but if you've got like a couple of quid spare a month, you can get 4 billion games for free, essentially. It's ridiculous. Game Pass is amazing. Go grab it.
And then I've been watching. So a friend of mine gave me their Funimation login, and so I started watching a bunch of anime because, like, the way I work, since I'm based in the U.S., my partner works a regular U.S. job, none of these like British summertime hours. So I have about 4 hours after I finish working before they get home, and a lot of the times, especially because it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Texas right now, I will lay on the couch and watch anime during that downtime. And so I've been picking up some series that I've meant to finish, some old things. I went back and watched Paranoia Agent, and my gosh, what a wonderful anime.
I'm very envious because I love Satoshi Kon, but we can't watch Paranoia Agent here in the UK. It's not available on Funimation.
Oh
so
no!
I think I've watched every other Satoshi Kon like film. Because Paranoia Agent is his only series, I think. Is the person behind Perfect Blue and and stuff, right? I do kind of want to give that a go because like that's it's one of the good animes.
Paprika is just Inception before Inception.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, Paranoia Agent is like all the good bits of Satoshi Kon like put into a series. It's what I think 13 episodes, so that sweet spot of an anime series. It's super great. I mean, I watched it. It was one of those things growing up, because I grew up in the 90s and the 2000s whenever Funimation was on at least American television. And so like late at night, I would catch one episode of Paranoia Agent somewhere in its run. It was always a random episode. And I was just like transfixed. Like, what is going on? I would wait up every night to see if they were going to air another one before it got to the 4-hour Inuyasha block. Just what an incredible series. It's like fraught with all of this like economic and social tension that was going through Japan in like the early 2000s. It has to deal with popular culture, like sort of like co-opting this sort of like the space that is the space in like the sort of national psyche that I think in 2021, as we go through, like as people sort of turn to popular culture, something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, to like escape the real world, but then often that going a bit too far and people sort of like relying on that too much to escape reality. it really delves deep into those sort of like tensions and those sort of anxieties in a really interesting way. It's also funny. It's well animated. It's incredible. I don't know. I'm going to be effusive in my praise. It's just a super great series. I really enjoyed going back and watching it. It holds up. So yeah, if you can pirate it, sorry, UK folks, find a way.
Sorry, capitalism.
It's really hard to find because, like I say, it's been something I've been after for a while. There's kind of someone.
And I think I was reading that like the rights to like sell, like to produce the DVDs or Blu-rays are just gone, and it's hard. Like it's expensive to find any physical copies too.
Yeah, it's this wild thing about nowadays with Netflix and streaming platforms. Everything is so available, and yet so many things are just not available at all because they're just the licenses are lost in some filing cabinet somewhere.
Yeah.
And so then physical media just diminishes and nobody bothers to reprint it because everybody assumes everything will be on streaming.
Yeah.
Well, and finally, I'm
happy Friday.
Sorry for the bait and switch, but like, man, buy a plane ticket to the US in a year and then come and watch it.
Probably cheaper than buying it on Blu-ray, to be honest.
I will give you my friend's Funimation login and you can watch it. And like a Starbucks parking lot or something. And then I started watching Sunny Boy, which is also on Funimation. It's a new one, just came out this year. I'm only a few episodes in. It's interesting. It's sort of like a weird speculative, like character-driven, weird show where this high school gets pulled out of reality and all the kids there have powers and they're it's a bit like Lord of the Flies mixed with the sort of anime where teens all of a sudden get powers and then they have to like redefine social dynamics based on who has what powers and stuff like that. So it's all about these teenagers having to deal with being teens and then also trying to restructure their own societal like relation to each other. And of course, as it's going through and as it like picks up each character in an episode, it kind of goes back into like before this happened, what were they doing? Why do they hate each other? What are these grudges or these like love interests or these histories that are making every interaction as they just try to survive in this weird new reality really fraught. And it's obviously going somewhere to some like big thesis like these shows always do. And I'm not sure where it's going to end up and whether it's going to be satisfying when it gets there. But I kind of like the way that it's working through all of these things, the way it's trying to investigate them. Like one student just invented Bitcoin as a way to like, because like one person has a power where they can create anything, but it erupts into blue flame like 12 hours later unless there's some sort of like exchange, like you have to exchange something for it. And so this character's like, yeah, everyone's still got their smartphones and for whatever reason they still work. So I've created like a digital currency that we can all use to easily exchange stuff so that we can just skip right over bartering and go straight to Bitcoin or the blockchain or whatever. I hope this show is not just like a big sort of like excuse to front.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Buy Bitcoin.
They're decentralizing the economy. It's I'm sure, Chase, you're the same. I just get endless press releases about different blockchain things and different Bitcoin competitors, and it is exhausting.
Yeah. It is super exhausting.
Like if you work in any media, it seems, no matter where, like which career I've worked in and what I'm writing about, endless press releases about Bitcoin.
It's the new buzzword, isn't it? Blockchain.
Yeah. It is funny that the episode that ends with the person inventing Bitcoin is also the episode where the entire island they're on just burns to the ground. Which, I mean, might be a metaphor. Who knows? Anyway, that's Sunny Boy. It's on Funimation as well. I'm going to continue watching it. It seems really interesting. For something old, something new. That's what I've been up to.
Matt, something borrowed, something blue from you?
I have been, well, actually, speaking of that, I will just look at my list because I've immediately forgotten everything I played. I continue to play Descent, which is definitely something old because it's been on like 5 podcasts now that I've been talking about it. I continue to just get through that campaign so I can review it. I still like it. Yesterday I was painting the Bryn, one of the figures from it. I like the figures. I'm still enjoying it very much. I played Imperium Legends, which is a deck builder from I think a couple of months ago. From Osprey Games.
Imperium Classics is the other one as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think Liv took Classics and I took Legends. And it's good. It's quite heavy. It's very keyword heavy. So the actual game isn't that complicated because it's a deck builder. You gain cards, you are building. It's a civilization game. You build up your civilization. You're trying to, add various technologies, and then by gaining resources, you can then advance your. They're asymmetrical, so you can advance your asymmetrical civilization through a development deck. So that then gives you new cards and gives you points and so on. You can add things to what they call your history, which kind of stores them and racks up points that way. And then at the end of the game, you basically score depending on, various scoring objectives. So it's like, okay, you need X number of cards that are city cards, or you need X number of cards that are technology cards, things like that. So my wife played the Atlanteans, so they played differently. They didn't have a history; they had a flooded deck. So you add cards to your flooded deck, but they also start because they are, in the mythical sense of Atlanteans, they are kind of like an advanced civilization in terms of technology. So they didn't have to progress from. It does have a note about this in the rulebook, but you start as like a quote barbarian empire, and then at some point you progress to I think utopian empire, something like that, or maybe just empire. But there's this sense of that you hit a point where you've developed enough technology where you leap forward in, and that lets you then play other cards. But the Atlanteans just start there, so they have kind of a different mechanical thing. I was playing, I believe, the Egyptians, which it was interesting. I think, like I said, there's a lot of keywords on those cards, and we found ourselves just constantly referencing the rulebook. It probably took us about 2.5 hours to play, something like that. I think we were interrupted at one point, and it was. I have a real soft spot for civilization games. I just like the momentum of civilization games. I think just that sense of starting from like rudimentary technology and building up to I'm launching a rocket to Mars. It's like a very fun, satisfying loop for me. Even avoid like combat stuff is never that fun in civilization games. It's just the sense of building up and up and up. And this. It does that okay. It is largely just a heavy deck builder with kind of a civilization theme on top of it. It's not super thematic. I think the only place that really comes in is in the asymmetrical factions, which is interesting. But again, it was just kind of like, this is a well put together deck builder. It took quite a while to play. I don't think I would play it above. It's one of those games where it's a deck building civilization game, but I don't think I would play it before other civilization games if I was after a civilization game. And I think if I was looking for a deck builder, I wouldn't necessarily play it as my favorite deck builder. So if you are looking for that very specific meeting of those two ideas, there's that. But then there's also things like Through the Ages,
right?
Which is, civilization card game. So like I say, I think it's a good game that I was just kind of like, I'm glad I played this. I don't know if I'll play it again.
Do you think it's going to be one of those games where you have to you're going to continue to reference the rule book so heavily as you did the first time? Or is it one of those games where after a couple of playthroughs, you're like, all right, I've got this. I'm not going to need to reference very much at all.
Towards the end, we were kind of familiar enough with the terms. So, and it's one of those games where they seem to just swap out terms for the sake of trying to make it feel a bit more thematic. So you don't discard cards. I can't even think what they call them. But it's like some thematic word where we were like, what does that mean? It's like, oh, you discard them.
I know we're going to talk about this later, I think, but I had that big issue with Netrunner as well, where it was just like every single word that you have collectively come to understand, like deck, like discard, like whatever, were all like, here is a brand new word that we've invented because we can get it smaller on a card. And it's just like, I get that, but also, what is this?
Yeah.
And then it's different for each player as well.
That makes it like, if each player also has their own set of like weird keywords that are like, I feel like there's a critical mass for, it's like in writing, it's like there's only so many proper nouns you can throw into like a genre book before the reader's just like, I'm out. That's too much.
Like I say, I kind of appreciate it, but I think at a distance. But it's well produced. The art's nice. I believe it's from the Miko. I believe it's the Miko who did the art for Raiders of the North Sea and so on. So it's like slightly cartoony, like very stylized. It looks great, and Osprey are great with production values. But I think gameplay-wise, it was like, I enjoyed this, but I would probably play Through the Ages before this, or I'd play actual Civ or a different deck. Wills, I'll leave you to chat about Hive. I also played Villainous with Mian and Liv. That should be coming out soon. We played the Marvel one. It's Villainous.
but it's Marvel.
Yeah, Villainous is a good game. It's another asymmetric game where you play as the different villains, and they all have different objectives and kind of slightly different gameplay features. It was fun. Yeah, I like Villainous, but I actually cleared while I was off last week. I cleared through my games, and Disney Villainous was one of the ones I got rid of. So it's kind of like I had my time with this. It was fun, but you know, I've never been like, I want to play Villainous.
Yeah.
Chase, you continue to run a game of Avatar Legends, the RPG, for a group of us involving, including even myself and Alex Meehan. I'm enjoying that game still a lot. We got into some combat in the last session, which I think you're kind of right up from last week or the week before. You're kind of spot on in terms of like combat could be a little bit smoother. It's not kind of, it tries to capture the sense of the show in that it's like very quick bursts where people are choosing a type of action before everything happens. But at points it's not as kind of, I think not as clear cut as it could be, which I'm hoping like the full rule book might spell it out a little bit more. There are a few times where I just found myself going like, okay, so that means I can do this, and that means I can do this kind of move, and how does that actually relate to what I want to do in this situation? But Powered by the Apocalypse continues to be just a brilliant system in general. I think combat has never been where Powered by the Apocalypse is strongest. It tends to focus more on your moves outside of combat, which I think is, in Avatar, is the real highlight, because they feel that's where you get that character development and kind of your storytelling beats. And then the combat is kind of kept necessarily like a little bit lighter, particularly in the quick start rules, which is what we're playing with. So
I spoke to Magpie this week. I should have a piece coming up next week about my talks with them. And just in the course of it, they did say that there's actually a second version of the quick start, which has some expanded, and then they're about to release a third version, like a version 3, that also kind of expands it a little bit more. So they have been like really building that system out. So I might check that out and see. I'm not gonna like kind of like write anything more about it until it gets fully released. But if you have been playing and you kind of run the same problems that like, and I know Wheels, you've gotten some combat during the series, right?
The problem is, Chase, I hate all combat systems, and I think they just shouldn't exist. So like, I'm probably the wrong person to talk to about it. My favorite RPGs are the ones that literally just say, well, yeah, combat works the same as the rest of the game, because why wouldn't it?
Right. Yeah. But in any case, however your feelings, once that new version comes out, you can check it just to see if it maybe addresses the problems. It sounds like it's not going to make a convert of Wheels, but for everyone else, there will be some more expanded rules ahead of the new version, or the full version coming out next year.
Yeah, but I'm still really enjoying those, even in quick start form. Those rules I think are really satisfying. Obviously, that world is incredible. I think the rules do a really good job of kind of capturing the spirit of it. Like we had some really good story beats, which of course thanks to our wonderful GM. But I think the system also supports a lot of those moments as well. So yeah, I think for people who are fans of Avatar and Korra, it's kind of a really faithful way of doing it. It feels, like they haven't just slapped it on top of an existing system.
Yeah, that moment where one of our players wanted to do something, and then I was just like, there is a move just for this. And they were like, oh my gosh. And they did it. And then the role-playing scene that it resulted was beautiful. And like both players like thought about their characters in a different way after that move. I was like, this is like all of the gears hitting in just the right way. And it just, like the skies opened up and you could see the intent behind all of the design just so clearly.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Other than that, I received a copy of Monopoly Builder, which I haven't played yet, and I know Monopoly, but this had kind of passed me by. It seems that it was kind of just snuck out earlier this year, and it's basically Monopoly Catan, which is weird. It's not just here's another Monopoly. I mean, it is here's another Monopoly, but it's the Monopoly board, and then you build 3D skyscrapers in the middle. And you collect resources, and when people roll certain results on dice, you receive resources, much like the popular board game Catan. So at some point, I'm going to play it, mostly out of curiosity, to be like, "What Hasbro? What have you done here, Hasbro? what monster have you created from the combination of Catan and Monopoly?" It's a really curious thing. But I looked at first glance, I was like, "Oh, okay, like cool, a Monopoly." okay. And then I looked a little bit closer and I was like, hold on, this is a very strange thing. So I'm not expecting it to suddenly turn me around on Monopoly. I don't think I'm the biggest kind of Monopoly hater out there, but I certainly am not itching to play it. But I'm wondering whether it will keep things quicker and make things a little more engaging, because it sounds like you'll have a bit more player agency in terms of what you're collecting and how you spend it to build things in the middle. So yeah, there we go. Outside of games, I continue to read Berserk, which it's real hard going at points. I've spoken about Berserk before. I actually had to pause because nearly all of the books were sold out, and so I was unable to find the fourth volume. So for 2 or 3 months, I've had to place multiple orders before having them cancelled due to no stock. But I finally found a copy from Germany, so I've managed to continue through. And yeah, Berserk is a really fascinating thing. So those who don't know, it is a manga. It is almost quite literally the life's work of a Japanese author, illustrator called Kentaro Miura, who passed away earlier this year, which is kind of what spurred me to go and discover it. And it's this kind of highly influential dark fantasy series. There are echoes of it in things like Dark Souls and even Final Fantasy, like a lot of kind of modern fantasy. Things like, I think, Morkborg and Kingdom Death Monster.
Anything that's got a giant sword in it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes, massive sword is like one of the hallmarks of Berserk. But also it is very it's just very raw at points. Like it's incredibly explicit, violent. There's a lot of like sexual violence. There's a lot of like at points it's genuinely like very distressing and uncomfortable to read. So I would, anyone that's just thinking, oh, I like Dark Souls, I'll go pick this up. It is, like it comes with a massive content warning, and I think there are problematic elements, like especially in the earlier arcs, which were kind of like late 80s, early 90s. Like there's a lot of stuff that has really not aged well and wouldn't have been, even at the time would not have been acceptable. But going through it has been kind of a fascinating journey of recognizing its influence in modern day fantasy, a lot of modern day fantasy. So yeah, it's been a journey for sure. It's a real kind of a trip to go through it and kind of just recognize, like I say, where a lot of the things that I've been into for a while have come from. But then it also, like I say, comes saddled with some very hard to swallow aspects. I watched Black Narcissus, the classic Powell and Pressburger film. I did not like that film. It's very, very racist. It's like, it was one of those classics on my list. Like, oh, I'll watch this. Like, I've liked other Powell and Pressburger films. Like, I love A Matter of Life and Death. And it was like, oh, wow, this is really, it's like set in Imperial India, and there's the brown face in the film, and someone at one point, one of the characters is literally like, they're like children, speaking about the local like Indian residents of the village, and it's just unacceptable. Like it's from 37 or something like that, but even then, again, like it just, I can't understand how anyone would watch this and be like, that's what classic cinema should be.
It's from the 1940s, so a real decade of racial equality.
So yeah, not good. I also rewatched Akira, speaking of anime. Akira, a film that I remember not particularly liking. Sorry, anime fans. But you know what? I rewatched it and I was wrong. It's good.
Damn right, you were. Yeah.
Yeah, I rewatched it. I don't know why I rewatched it, just on the spur of a moment, thinking, I'll try this again. And was like, oh, I made a huge mistake not liking this the first time around. I don't know why I didn't like it, but it's really good.
Were you kind of like me the first time you watched it? Were you just a big shonen boy? And were just like, I don't know how you got started in anime, but whenever I first watched it, I was basically, all of my influences were just very shonen sort of stuff. And so when it didn't really scratch those itches, I came away kind of disappointed.
I came into anime through basically watching Ghost in the Shell on VHS repeatedly, because that was the one videotape I owned, or like one anime film I owned.
One of the few good animes,
yeah. Well, Akira, also very good, it turns out. But I think I came to it very late. I probably came to it as like a late teen or early 20s. So yeah, it wasn't really formative in my, and I don't know why I didn't like it. Like I say, I have no idea because it was about 10 years ago I probably last watched it. So
What you should do,
I'm
man,
glad I rewatched it.
is you should read the internet phenomenon that is Akira, but with Simpsons characters. There is
I don't know about
there's an entire redraw of the original manga, where every single character has been replaced by one of the characters from The Simpsons, with Milhouse playing the Akira himself or whatever.
Tetsuo, like the boy
Tetsuo,
who...
yeah,
Oh,
that's
it's
the
just
one.
no, Canada's.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
And it's it's something. There's a video by Super Eye Patch Wolf, who's a very, very good YouTuber from Ireland, and he does like a sort of deep dive into like the weird internet culture that is built entirely around just people who used to watch The Simpsons, and like that is one of the like formative works. It's like a it's just wild. It's something you can't really understand until you see it. Like seeing this giant flesh abomination with Milhouse's face on it. It's bonkers, but it's so good.
All right. Well, I guess I'll go and like yeah.
There you go,
that
Matt.
sounds like the weird kind of thing I'd be into.
It does sound like the weird kind of thing you'd be into. That's why I'm recommending it.
But yeah, that's everything I've been up to. Wills.
Right. So I've not played many board games this week. I played Hive with Matt for the first time ever because we did a You've Never Played. Turns out I'm not bad at it actually.
Yeah,
I did all right.
yeah.
Nice.
But it is like you said, Matt. It's one of those classics. One that just kind of missed me a little bit. For those not aware, it is kind of like it's very chess-like. You have white pieces and black pieces, but instead of having knights and castles and whatever, you have little bugs. So you've got an ant. Pardon me. You've got an ant counter. You've got a grasshopper, a spider, and something else, and a beetle.
And a bee.
And then every one of those counters, you have like, I don't know, you've got like 3 of each or whatever. They're all trying to surround the enemy's queen bee token, which you have 1 of, which is basically your king. And if you can manage to completely surround their queen bee with whatever mix of counters of your color and their color, as long as the queen bee physically cannot move anymore, then you win. But it's way more like there's no boards. You sort of build the board as you're playing because it's just little hexagonal pieces that you're putting down. So as you play, you're sort of like the first opening moves are you like forming the battlefield almost. Like it's really interesting. I think it's way more interesting than chess personally. But I had a really, really good time with it, and it was definitely one of those things where it was like, oh, I can see why this has endured for so many years because like this is obviously just such a fantastic game. Orangeful actually just played for the first time last weekend as well, so there you go. I think it is one of those things where it's like you look at it and it's like this is an abstract strategy game in which you'll be playing with hexagonal bug pieces, and you're like, nah, you're right, mate. But actually when you play it, it's pretty good.
Yeah, matches like 15 minutes too. Like it's quick games, right?
And there's a pocket version that you can literally, it's like Love Letter, you just shove it in a little bag and take wherever you want. Great for like a plane journey or a train, like fantastic game. Yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it.
You don't need a board because you create the board as you place the pieces. I think it is genuinely like, and I don't use this term like that, I think Hive is like a board game I would describe as a literal masterpiece. Like I think it is perfectly formed. Like the rules make sense, like the presentation of it, like the pieces are very pleasing to just like, they're like chunky tiles. It travels well, but you know, you can teach it to someone, but there's a lot of strategy in there. I do really think it is, a real like standout game.
I think so. Chris Longhurst just said they find it really intimidating to play because it seems like I'm not going to be good at this. And I think I had that same sort of idea of like, oh, this is going to be like really chessy and like I'm just going to feel like an idiot when I play it. But in actual fact, I think it's not like, I don't know if it's just me and Matt have similar playstyles where we just only play 1 turn in advance. But I think there's not as much sort of, here are the next 8 moves I'm going to do. Like, it felt very reactive to me. Like, it was like, okay, Matt has blocked up this path, so I've got, like, an opening here, but I'm worried he might do that, so I'll do this instead. And, like, you've got that nice thing as well of, if there's no good move on the board, you can just take another counter and put it down. Like, until you run out, you're just like, okay, I'm just going to give myself another option here. So I think there's there's definitely like little things like that. We both like put our beetles on top of each other's queens, which is like a sort of big move, you know. Like there are a few things where it's like, okay, cool. Like once you understand that that's a good play, that seems like a powerful thing to do every time. But it's definitely one of those things where I think you can just sort of like play in the moment and be a bit reactive with it, which makes it really good. Apart from that, I've been reading up on. You must know about this, Chase. There is, because I wanted to play Magic the Gathering with Zoe. Zoe's not super into like competitive card games. There is a co-op version of Magic the Gathering called Horde, in which you fill a deck with like, obviously it was zombie themed to begin with, so you fill it with like tokens and then like spells, and basically you keep playing cards until you hit a token, at which point you spawn one or whatever, and you just have to get through the deck without either of you dying. And it looks really fun. So I've literally just been reading up on the rules, but I don't know how to get that many zombie tokens to be able to build one. So, to be honest, I think the Forgotten Realms packs have probably got quite a few zombies in them. But yeah, I'm struggling to think how I can build one of those decks. So open to advice.
So some advice I have to you is if you have like a local game store nearby, or if you want to order some online, most game stores that I've been to will sell packs of like token, like blank tokens.
Oh, okay.
And there are even some that will fit dry erase or wet erase markers. So you can draw a token on there for whatever purpose. And then if you want to reuse them, you say you're tired of Horde, or you want to do like dragons instead of zombies, just wipe them all down and then draw some dragons on there instead. And they fit inside sleeves. You can just like build a deck like that. And they're fairly, at least at my store, they're like fairly cheap, and they come in like packs of 60 or 100 for whatever your purpose. So that might be, and then if you or Zoe are artistically inclined, you can have some good fun drawing zombie tokens, you know. That's like a fun
Stinky
way to get
butt
invested
zombies.
in the game. Yeah, for sure. I think that might be a good, the only other thing is like seeing if someone's selling just like stock tokens somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, card sleeves and printing is obviously a good one. I think there's something about hitting a piece of paper rather than a card. You kind of know what's coming, do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's difficult to shuffle them almost. But yeah, no, I think I'm quite keen to try that, because I've only ever played like standard Magic and like Brawl on Arena, which is basically just like crappy Commander. But I think I do want to like try a few of the homebrewed sort of like game modes out, because I think that's where some of the magic is in Magic. Because a lot of the Commander is like one of the most popular things ever, right? And it's just something that someone made up, you know. I think sometimes Magic can be as good as a tool as it is a game almost. It's like there's all this stuff that you can just like build something out of rather than having to play with the legal rules. And apart from that, the one other thing that I've been doing this week, me and Zoe have started learning how to skateboard.
Oh heck yeah.
Yeah, because I sat down, we were talking about Game Pass earlier. I sat down on Game Pass and I was like, I want someone to play. I was getting a bit bored. I was feeling ill, so I really wanted to just sit down and mong out with something. And I found they had Skate on there. Like they had you could, they basically like emulate 360 games, which is incredible because you get all the little 360 achievement overlays and stuff. It's like, oh, it was such a blast from the past. But like, yeah, they had Skate. So I was like, oh yeah, I love Skate. I would love to play Skate. Smash through the entire game in like 2 sittings or whatever. And after that, I was just like, God, I do miss skateboarding, because I did it a little bit as a teenager.
I want to shred.
Yeah, man. I want to do a pop shove it.
You load up the Tony Hawk soundtrack on Spotify. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Stick that in your ears.
Have a bang on that. So like I was just sat there like, oh God, I'd love to skate. And then me and Zoe were chatting about it, because I think I ended up playing Skate 3, because they don't have 2 on there. I never played 2 or 3. I didn't vibe with 3 as much because it felt just a bit like aimless. But they've got this whole thing where you make like a skate team. So I made a character for me and then made a character for Zoe. And then like we were talking about like, oh man, it'd be fun to skate. And then eventually, like literally that evening, I was like, I have opened up a local skate shop website and I have put the skateboards in the basket. Shall we do it? She's like, yeah, screw it. So I've got like this. We just bought like some complete boards. Like they're not like super crappy, you know, mall boards or whatever they call them, but they're not super expensive either. So we've just been like messing around. I'm actually wearing pads as well because I'm an adult, so like stopping myself.
Safety first.
Do you want to get the board? Yeah, go for it.
I'm not a shot.
No, you're not a shot. You should be all right. I'll do that. There you go. Do you want to see my skateboard? It's pretty exciting. Sorry for all the people at home who are listening via the like audio only version of this podcast.
You can go to youtube.com/dicebreaker.
You can
and
go
check
to
out these sick
youtube.com/dicebreaker.
boards.
Thank you very much, Chase Carter. So this is
Just
my
run the
one.
trucks around so that they get the real like immersive sound of.
Look at that. So I got the
nice.
Joyboard because I love how colourful they are, and they have little
Yeah.
pandas on the wheels, which is fantastic.
Beautiful.
But yeah, so like we've just been like, thank you, Zoe. We've just been like messing around on that. Oh, you want me to cover it again, just in case? Okay. Zoe doesn't want to be on camera right now.
Very chill clothes.
But yeah, so like I've just been having a whale of a time, just like trying to get my like balance back and stuff like that, and like teaching, because Zoe never did any of it, so I've just been teaching her how it works as well. But we've been watching, like, I watched this video on YouTube of like this guy who is basically your dad, and he's just like teaching you how to skate for adults, and he's just like he's from somewhere in America, I don't know where, but he's got one of those like very chilled accents, and he's just like, now you don't want to look like an idiot when you're doing this. So here's how to not look like a damn fool or whatever. It's so good. But yeah, I've been having a great time just getting some physical exercise. Imagine that.
That's rad.
But yeah, that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing this week.
All right, nice. Yeah. Chase, were you ever into skateboarding as a youth?
Oh, man, I tried. I lived out in the country, and we had more gravel roads than we did paved roads. So I just ended up wearing a lot of Volcom shirts from Hot Topic and hoping that no one asked me very many questions.
Yeah, I feel like that was much of my teenage years as well. It's like I tried skateboarding. Like at one point, my friends just put some junk together in a barn and were like, "We built a skate park," and then it, like broke a board over like a crowbar that was wedged between two crates. I could never really ollie or anything like that. I could just about steer.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was more for the aesthetic. It's like I'm gonna wear Vans and I'm gonna have a heartogram chain wallet and like a beanie, a peaked beanie, and yeah, I'm gonna just carry the skateboard with me because it's cool. It was very much that kind of poser.
I very
approach.
much like I got to a level where I could cruise around like pretty comfortably, but literally never popped an ollie, never did anything of any note. So now I want to change that. Like I feel like when I was a kid I was like very, very scared, but also would not ever put pads on because I would look like such an idiot, you know. But now I'm an adult and I don't care. I'm fully prepared to look like an idiot, so I'm going to put all the pads on and the helmet and just. I feel like the problem is if you're not protected, like you don't want to fall, obviously, because you're just going to land on concrete. So it stops you actually doing it properly. Whereas when you're like padded up, you're a bit more protected. You're just like, well, screw it. I know it's not going to hurt too much if I fall because I've got all these things to protect me. So now I can give it a bit more of a go. So I feel like I'm getting back into it. We're gonna give it our all, and we might suck at it, but who knows? It'll be fun.
I also feel like learning how to fall is a skill you need if you're going to stick with this.
Yeah.
Like you need to be able to fall properly so you don't hurt yourself.
Especially when you're approaching 30, I think. Like you can't get away with it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, my board's fine, but now I'm the one that's broken, just aching and slowly like grunting. As you
I literally
So
I went out and. I think again I was still not feeling great. I wanted to get some fresh air. I was like, I'm going to go down to the park and just push it around. And I didn't put pads on. I was like, I'm just going out cruising. I'll be fine. Because it's not been that long. Because I longboarded into work and stuff. Like it's not been that long since I pushed around on a board. But I forgot how like tiny and hard the wheels are on a tricker skateboard. Like you hit anything, you're just over. So like I was like going around, I got my feet back, I got my balance back, I was like, yeah, I'm feeling all right, and then literally just hit a stone and then just tumbled over. I came back and I was like, my ribs hurt.
Never again. Wear those pads.
Wear those pads, baby. It's real
There's
important.
nothing cooler than being safe and protecting your body.
I might put some kind of Kevlar body armor on or something.
Yeah, you need like almost a reverse like airbag in a car. So as soon as you hit the floor, it just.
I'll just get one. I was saying as we should get one of those Zorbs, you know, where it's just you're just a big
on top of a skateboard
with your legs sticking out. I've seen people do that. It looks hilarious.
Yeah,
but yeah, there you go. That I've been reliving my youth and playing EA's Skate and wanting to skateboard.
Nice. I think there was a card game a few years ago. I think it may have even been called something like Skate, although maybe not for legal reasons. But I think there aren't that many tabletop games about skateboarding, and I feel like it's an untapped because you have the like the little fingerboards, right? Like there should be something about like pulling off, like positioning yourself and pulling off a trick as you go up a half pipe. Like that should be a game.
I think in the same way that like Rallyman GT or whatever it's called, the same way that works with like the momentum system and stuff like that. I think you can make like a pretty solid skateboarding card game.
Yeah,
it'd probably be more about vert than straight. Sorry to get technical with you all,
but like push your luck to get to a 720.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 540. So.
We did cover back in January. There is a game called Skate, the card game, which was on Kickstarter. It's by just like an indie developer. We didn't hear anything about it because it got caught up like a lot of other small games in the shipping fracas globally that is just trying to get stuff across the ocean. But it's still coming out. So if you want to, you can just look at Skate, the card game. It's more about like tricks than it is about like sort of evoking that's just like getting on a board and going. But someone's playing in that space.
That's cool. All right. Shall we move on to news?
Let's do it.
Because there's quite a lot to actually run through, even in our shortened news section. So let's just dive straight in because there was a lot of Magic the Gathering stuff this week, which Chase, you were on call for the Magic the Gathering. Was it Magic Showcase 2021? Is what they called it?
Yeah, that's what they called it. Just their big, like, so a lot of Magic news is often they'll just do like 50 minutes of like talking about like secret layers and other stuff, other premium things that they're going to be selling. But this was like genuinely just them announcing everything that's going to be coming up in the rest of this year and next year.
Of that like graphic they put up at one of those Marvel keynotes with like, here's the 500 films we're working on.
Right, like Marvel's next 10 years of the like post Infinity Stone movie franchise BS that they're doing. But yeah, it was much like that. So the big stuff is that they announced the 4 sets that they're going to be coming out in 2022. Chiefly that there will be no core set, which they tend to do most years. This year, they're just saying, no core set. We're just going to do 4 big themed sets, and we're going to see how that works. They have done in the past... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, that's good. It'll make it the second year running, right? Because Adventures in the Forgotten Realms replaced this year's core set. So maybe...
That's right.
Do you think this is a sign that maybe they just...
They're definitely
some core sets, yeah.
They're definitely trying that space. They've done this before a couple of years, but never consecutively. This, I think, is the first time they've done 2 years consecutively without a core set. If it goes well, I think they may just like get rid of core sets. Now, I'm sure that like, so the reason why you had a core set is that you always wanted to make sure in rotation there was a sort of block of cards that gave a lot of like staples. So you're talking about like removal in certain colors, like big creatures in green, like white had these sort of spells. So they could like really experiment in the other sets without the game sort of like losing the tools that standard players needed to like be able to function and create like a rich and sort of vibrant meta game, right? I think that they're still going to do that. Like Adventures in the Forgotten Realms was like people say was like, you know, is a little slower. It wasn't as mechanically interesting, even though they had some standout stuff, but it was a little bit more of a subdued set because it was taking the place of that core set, trying to offer a lot of those staple cards. So I can imagine one of the 4 that they came out with next year is going to be a lot like that. So first up, there's going to be 1 in each quarter. They're just talking about quarters. There's no set release dates. The first one is probably the most contentious of the bunch, which is a return to Kamigawa. It's Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, which confirms the rumors that, yes, they are doing what seems to be a cyberpunk set for Magic the Gathering. It is actually the header image on the story we have on the site where I kind of break everything down. It's going to be one of the new planeswalkers. Their name, we don't know very much about it, but their name is Saito. They are a ninja, just a cyberpunk ninja. They've got a katana. They've got a katana with shuriken just like up the blade, which is not a real thing. They've got a little fractal like tanuki on their shoulder, which is cute. God. It's cute. Like the fractal tanuki is cute, but it is very much the sort of like cyberpunk 2077 pop culture genre. Again, we don't know much about it beyond the name and some images, but it sure seems to me that everyone's fears that they're just going to sort of just whole cloth, just it's just going to be Cyberpunk without any of the real sort of like social commentary that
I'm
Cyberpunk
so
should
sick
have.
of Cyberpunk stories told by massive mega corporations.
Yep.
Well, we've got great news coming up for you with the second news story, but we'll get onto that.
Yeah.
Oh god.
So that's up first, and we have no idea. Like, again, we don't know what it's going to. They didn't talk about mechanics. They didn't really talk about the sort of like design space that they're going to be getting into. It is a return to Kamigawa, which was a set that came out in the early 2000s. It's a fan favorite. It's also fraught with some real baggage. It is, you know, a lot like Cyberpunk is fetishization of Asian culture. They're just hitting a different time period with Cyberpunk. It is still very much like they're fetishizing. You know, with Kamigawa, it was the sort of like, I don't know specifically, but very historical, like sort of like temples and ninja and sages and, you know, all of that sort of like the magic that is built into and understood through like ancient and more historically placed like Japanese spiritualism and religion. It also just sort of like did that thing that a lot of like early like broadly Asian culture does, where it just sort of takes like samurai, but also like Three Kingdoms romance period in China and a lot of like other like East Asian cultures and just gloms them together. Cyberpunk does that too, because Cyberpunk is largely drawing on that sort of like 1980s yellow panic of like Asian culture writ large taking over America and therefore the Western world. We'll see if they try to do in that space. Their creative director, whose name Jess Linzilla, said on stream that they are working with cultural consultants and other people to make sure that they, quote, do it right this time, is what she said. I've reached out to see what exactly that process looks like, but who can say?
Yeah, because Strixhaven, which we saw relatively recently, also did not really follow through on some of that stuff. It feels like there was and so for this to follow quite quickly on that is surprising.
Yeah, Strixhaven did have like its character in Killian Liu, which was very much playing in some like, you know, Asian like tiger parent stereotypes. I just don't really like. It's like Wheels. It's like you said. Even if they did a good job, I am too just sick of Cyberpunk as like this aesthetic genre that we're playing in. Luckily, the three other sets do go in some different directions. Specifically, so the next one that's sort of like a new thing is Streets of New Kapena, which is going to be coming out. I believe that's going to be the third set in the year. And it's like a 1920s noir art deco looking set. It's really cool, kind of glitzy. There's like there's 5 crime families that ruled this city that was built by angels, but now it's like been taken over by devils, which is just broadly seems like a metaphor for like America, right? Like broad purpose and then taken over by crime and sort of capitalism run rampant in the 1920s. Seems cool. Might be an interesting thing. It is a definitely new sort of like art direction for Magic, which tends to play in largely fantasy spaces. And the other 2 sets are going to be like big capital F fantasy sets. So I'm kind of excited to see like what their artists do with this set, if nothing else. I think that'll be interesting. We know that there's going to be 5 families that spread across 3 colors. So each of the family will have 3 color identities. And then they said like a specific keyword on cards that'll be linked to those families. So I think mechanically that'll be an interesting set. I like the 3 color sets, like Shards of Alara from about a decade ago was really cool. It gives you a lot of space to play in whenever you're combining 3 colors. And then the last 2 sets, one is another return to Dominaria, which is sort of like the universe that's at the center of the multiverse of Magic. It's where a lot of their stories take place. They went back in 2018, so it hasn't even been that long since we've kind of played in this world. So I'm interested to see what they're doing there, like why they think it is worth going back so soon. I think that if I was going to be a betting man, that is going to be the set that's like a core set. I think that's going to be the one where they really sort of like put in a lot of the staple cards.
I was going to say, do you think it might also be tied to, obviously there's the Netflix show, which they teased a bit, and with Dominaria only being like the core Magic lore thing, whether that is a chance of like, okay, well, we're getting a new player base of people who've discovered it through Netflix. Now here's the Magic kind of central universe for them to leap into.
Totally. And it would make sense if they're going to use Dominaria, which is coming out in the summer. Their winter set called The Brothers War is also based in Dominaria, but more of like the history. There's these two characters. They're both brothers, and they're sort of like the nexus of a lot of the storylines that stretch through.
War?
They are at war. Yes. If I can remember my lore correctly, they're two brothers that end up in political positions, and through a lot of machinations, they end up leading two empires that go to war with each other. And the resulting war and the magic and the machines that they use just utterly obliterate the lands, the countryside, and all of the other countries that are swept up in it, and sort of begin these storylines and these legends that stretch throughout Magic's history and sort of like pepper the field, or I guess like plant the seeds for all the other stories that come out of it. We'll see. Like, it seems interesting. It is going to be a year where Magic both like really stretches into new areas and also goes back to its roots. This is going to be the 30th anniversary of the game next year. So I'm kind of interested to see where they go. I'm just so sore about that Neon Dynasty. That's just,
yeah.
There is a definite ceiling for me about like how good that set can be. I'm worried about it.
Yeah. Speaking of stretching in new directions, they also just threw out that Fortnite and Street Fighter will also come to its yeah. So while they're also going back to its roots, they are also just licensing the heck out of Magic the Gathering, because we got, so Lord of the Rings is in 2023, right? The Lord of the Rings set, which I think now has a name. Something Middle Earth. I can't remember the name of it, but it's
isn't that the Family Guy adaptation?
It's what you expect from a Lord of the Rings Magic set. It looks like, although I think it's just loaded boosters, right? It's not kind of they're not doing a full on.
For Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
No, that's a full set.
Oh, is it a full set?
It's going to be the
I'm
first.
thinking of Warhammer is Commander decks.
Commander decks, yeah. Lord of the Rings is going to be the first like Universes Beyond full set, which is interesting because that almost immediately goes against what they said they were going to do with Universes Beyond.
So yeah, and then like I say, Warhammer, and then Fortnite and Street Fighter will be Secret Lairs next year, I think, which will be. So the Fortnite cards will be reprints, but themed around Fortnite, the Battle Royale game. So I presume they'll have is it a llama? Whatever the there's like the pinata thing that is.
Or is it an alpaca?
Alpaca, sorry. And then Street Fighter will have new cards, so it will be the roster of characters, including Chun-Li, who will have a new mechanic in multi-kick. But those
Not a new
then
mechanic.
Come to other cards in the future, I think.
Yeah. So I guess some clarification. Multi-kick is not a new mechanic, but it's kind of an interesting use in that it is a very literal translation of multi-kick.
Is that a type of, because you can kick spells, can't you? There's kicker.
Yeah, multi-kicker means you can pay that cost multiple times and you get an effect for each time that you pay it. So with Chun-Li, whatever it's going to be, I guess it's like do more damage. It's like, yeah, she just rears up and throws out 5 kicks if you can pay that multi-kicker cost. And like you said, any cards printed like this, they have promised that they will come later on, so that they are not just exclusive designs. Like
it's not going to be another Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And then we also, it was interesting because they teased the Netflix show, which is coming up. I think they said it will land the end of next year, so end of 2022. And they announced Brandon Routh will be in it. But this followed, I think, quite literally the day before the news that the Russo brothers, known from the Avengers films, among other things, had left it over creative differences, I believe, is the reason, right, Chase? It's like... Yeah.
The report, which comes from Deadline, said that actually this was something they found out later, but like they left really early on. Like they kind of got the outline going, and then the Russo brothers and sort of the whole writing team followed them, just left the project, and they had to bring in like a new showrunner who brought in their own team. Yeah, over creative. They said it's amicable. But
of course, yeah, it always is.
Sure.
It's amicable. So... The bullet wounds are healing quite well. Don't worry about it. It's very amicable.
Yeah, you signed a check and no one's going to complain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that'll be interesting. And the second bit of news which I've pulled, moving on to it, also concerns Wizards of the Coast and a Cyberpunk card game, because there's a chance that Netrunner might be coming back in some form. Yeah.
I found this on the Netrunner subreddit. Someone was just like, there's a trademark filing by Wizards of the Coast for the word Netrunner, and it's sort of like, it's So just right off the bat, well, one, I am not a trademark lawyer. I have reached out to some trademark lawyers for some information about this. But as far as I understand, they have trademarked the use of the name in products and licensing and use and stuff like that. There's 3 separate filings that cover sort of like physical games, like board games and card games, computer games, and then other online or digital media. It's just sort of like broad nets that they're casting out. What that probably means is that Wizard of the Coast is just saying, however we're going to use it, these are all the sorts of things that we normally produce and put out and sell. We're not going to say what it's for, but it's going to be for something that we normally do. And it's the other important thing here is that it is an intent to use trademark, which means that they have between 6 months and a year, depending on how it's interpreted, to sell something using Netrunner. Otherwise, this is not one of those claims where they're just going to sit on the license. So they're going to be doing something with Netrunner, I mean, seemingly within the next 6 months or a year. That could be they're going to use it in a card name, something, or there's going to be like a secret layer. I've seen some people talk about a secret layer, or it could be something that's coming up in Neon Dynasty.
I was about to say, if we've got a cyberpunk setting coming out, that seems like the most obvious thing,
sure.
especially because with like the video game thing, it could just literally just be adaptions in Arena, right?
Yeah, that just feels like that surely will not go down well, because for those unaware, Netrunner Reborn was Android Netrunner by Fantasy Flight, which ran for about 6 years, so 2012 to 2018. Late 2018 was when the licensing ran out. So Wizards of the Coast originally had Netrunner, which was Richard Garfield game, so creator of Magic the Gathering. Fantasy Flight rebirthed it under the Android universe. And so, yeah, the licensing then ran out in late 2018, and there's been nothing since. So I feel like if they just put out some Netrunner cards for Secret Lair, that surely would just miff a load of people off, because like, oh, you registered Netrunner just to do another like branded Secret Lair, huh? Just going to cash in on the kind of the goodwill towards that game, because Netrunner is an incredible game.
Yeah,
it's just you can't get it anywhere really easily.
Yeah, I think the best place to do it is through Project Nisei, which...
Well, I was going to say, yeah, this is directly after like a fan project, which is keeping the game alive.
They've
like
released a core set and expansions, yeah, for sure. It's not clear if they decided to do any sort of product, how that would affect, say, Project Nisei, or what Fantasy Flight would do about this sort of thing. I mean, they don't have like the license anymore, so... But I mean, they still have... Android Netrunner is still like their game. I'm really curious about like what Wizards of the Coast can do and what they're going to do. The cynical read is that they're just going to do a secret layer, some branded product that they're going to sell for through their premium sort of like market. The more adventurous is that they're going to create some sort of like digital client for a Netrunner-esque game, and they're going to use that somewhere in the branding of it.
Yeah. Because there was some rumbling around when the license ran out for Fantasy Flight, because Cyberpunk 2077 was coming up, and original Netrunner was based in the world of Cyberpunk, the tabletop RPG. So Cyberpunk 2020 at the time. But that just never came to fruition. So, and you would think now, you know, that chance has kind of flown. There's no reason why they would suddenly... And Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't have the greatest goodwill in the world. So that feels like it wouldn't be that. But yeah, it's just such a strange... I think the timing of it is very odd now. 3 years after it, you know, after it ran out.
Yep.
You know, they killed that licensing, and then there's just been a 3 year gap of nothing.
Yeah, I mean, Wizards was not... They were pretty happy to sort of let it lie unclaimed. Yep. Like, they didn't sweep it up as soon as Fantasy Flight let it run out. They didn't do anything with it. And for Nisei's part, like, I'm pretty sure they've just run unaccosted by Fantasy Flight or Wizards of the Coast. I will say there are plenty of folks within that community I was reading through, and there are plenty of folks worried about, like, now that Wizards of the Coast is stepping in and maybe staking their claim, what's that going to mean for the future of the project? We don't know.
Nothing more cyberpunk than claiming a trademark and then crushing out a community project.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. That's about all the time for news we have. In terms of other stuff up on the site, obviously there is daily news from myself and Chase this week, as Mean's been off. Mean spoke to the folks behind the Gargoyles board game, which is kind of an interesting revival of that series, which I don't think anyone really saw coming. Jason Coles, who writes a lot about Magic on the site, took a look at Magic the Gathering Arena and its differences from paper Magic. Wheels, your look at Monopoly and why everyone hates Monopoly is up on the site now as well. If you'd like a text version of that, it's very good. But
also, please watch the video for the love of God.
Yes, also watch the video. The video is also in there. So however you prefer to, to learn about that, you should. It's a really interesting story, and speaking of corporations and, let's say, not doing quite right by the people that actually make the games, some stuff went down there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
All right, shall we move on to this week's weekly segment, which we didn't have a name for. I think, Wheels, you came up with this, so it's time for you to invent a name on the spot.
I'm going to go ahead and say this is probably one of the least well-prepared segments we've done on the podcast.
And that's saying a lot.
This segment is called Board Game 2, Board Game Harder. And I've just decided that we have been tasked with creating the subtitle that goes on the sequel to your favorite board game. So,
Will, you've changed this from the initial thing. You've thrown a spanner in the works here.
So the person who did not prepare at all wins. Haha.
That's right. It's me.
No time wasted.
So, the basic premise of this is that I thought it'd be quite funny if we found just regular old board games and gave them like cheesy movie taglines, like imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger saying "Nice to meet you" whilst like blasting on his freeze ray gun in Batman Beyond or whatever it's called. Give me that energy, basically. That's what I'm asking for. 2 board, 2 game, as Angel B says. Now, the alternative is we make it into a guessing game. That requires me to have prepared at least one. So
I've written down 4 here, but
oh
they're not very
God,
good.
4?
They're very short.
Okay.
Do you want to try and guess these, and we'll just
it.
We'll ramble our way through this. Okay, so first one up. Actually, I'm going to do that one last. First one up. Deep Space 9 hours. I wasn't sure how to format this one, but it's Deep Space 9 hours. Deep Space, 9 hours. Depending on.
I've got a pretty good guess for this one.
Go for it, Chase.
Is it Twilight Imperium?
It is Twilight Imperium.
Yeah, makes sense. God damn it. Okay.
I was mainly just very pleased with my Deep Space 9 pun.
The before and after is good.
Okay, number 2.
Oh, okay. I'm just going, huh?
Yeah.
Your finger is the trigger.
Cash and Guns.
No.
God damn it.
So, if I can get a hint, is it like a dexterity game?
It is a dexterity game, yeah. Cash and Guns has actual guns in it, right? So,
is it that finger gun game that we've played that I've forgotten the name of?
No, it's something a bit. I went broader than that.
Okay. Oh God, I've got an idea. Flick 'em up.
Flick 'em up.
Flick 'em up.
Nice.
There we go. I was
To be
trying
honest,
to remember.
Flick 'em up by itself is such a perfectly formed game name that it was hard
Fantastic
to
name.
talk.
Absolutely fantastic board game name.
Number 3 coming at you. It's a cat eat fox eat bird eat mouse world.
Root.
That's clever though. I like that. It's a good tagline.
And 4th and final, will you be triumphant?
B movie, the board game.
No.
Featuring Jerry Seinfeld.
Is this Hive?
It is Hive. That's why I put it last, yeah. So those were my taglines. But I feel like, Wheels, you've taken this in an unpredicted direction.
That's Chase, what I do. I'm always here to shake things up, Okay,
Chase, did you prepare any taglines before Wheels?
No.
I sure didn't. Okay, that's why I'm saying I come out on top. No wasted time here.
Well, here's what I think we should do. I think the chat should suggest. So we've had some great examples there from Matt of the kind of fantastic stuff we can do, but I want the chat to suggest some board games, and the premise is your favorite board game is getting a sequel, and you've been put on the brand team to decide on what the subtitle is. So let's think of, some of the greatest, just to buy some time, let's think of some of the greatest movie sequel subtitles that you can think of. I mean, Too Fast, Too Furious, for example, is a fantastic example. Anything from you two?
I don't know, Catan 2, Don't Roll a 7.
Don't roll a 7. Okay, Aaron Winmire would like Potion Explosion 2
Potion Explosion.
subtitle.
I started thinking about Sister Act and Potion Explosion 2, Bang in the Habit, but it doesn't work because it's a pun on nuns as well as potions.
Bang in the Habit. Oh, that's incredible.
Wait, so is this like going to be a themed potion explosion taking place in a nunnery?
Yeah.
Yeah, now it is, yeah.
Oh god, Toto, stop pressing buttons.
Potion Explosion 2, The Perfect Mix.
Yes. Sure.
Adam suggests Yachts Free.
Yachts Free.
You just skip the second one.
That was sort of the level I was going, where I was like, "Oh, okay, 8 Wonders."
That's good, yeah.
Tomb Haven.
Tomb Haven. Are you spelling it with the number 2 as well?
Yeah.
Like, Drive 3R.
2OOM.
Yeah. Oh, Aaron Winmire, Potion Explosion 2, We Lost Our Marbles is quite good.
That is good.
That's very nice.
Camel Up 2.
Camel Up 2. Camel Down.
I mean, there is a second edition of Camel Down. Camel Up, Camel Down.
Camel Up
down,
2,
Money Down.
Money Down.
I don't mind that. There's a good, like, Wingspan 2, The Wingening.
The Wingening. I was thinking of, like, Wingspan 2, Life's About to Get Wild.
Hatchinoff suggests Return Ticket to Ride, which is... that's good.
This is why... 2 Double Your Humps. This has got to be the quickest that it's ever dissolved, like completely just fallen apart, one of these segments.
Look, preparation would be too strong a word to describe how we normally go about these segments, but I feel like this one really... Coup 2. I mean, 2.
Let's stop.
It's just a stretch of 5 vowels. The most famous French word you can think of.
Oh god. Again, Clue. Someone's given us Clue, which of course would just be called 2.
Yeah.
Or Tudo if you're in the UK.
Clue 2, Professor Black's Revenge. He comes back as a ghost.
Oh my god! And then you play Mysterium.
Yeah, Mysterium could just be called Cluedo 2.
What about a follow-up to Scythe called Pitchfork? And it's not about the big countries, but it's actually a totally different game. It's all about the farmers that are trying to like keep the supply lines to these like gigantic bear robot armies out in the battlefield alive.
Yeah, I like that.
And you could have the sequel be called Hammer and then just go full communism.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And you could have a prequel to Tapestry just called Fred.
Fred.
Adam says DOS, a sequel to Uno. I believe that DOS exists.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I believe there is a game for DOS that is like Uno but has one extra rule, I believe.
Got it. It's got 2 rules instead of 1.
Nathaniel Levy suggests Dread. Dread 2. The Tower of... That's bad. The Stack of Spooks. I'm trying to play off of that, yeah.
Dread 2, I get knocked down, but I get back up again. You're never going to keep me down. The problem is I now can't... How about Love Letter 2, Return to Sender? That's great.
That's super good. That's the best one yet.
There we go. We've done it. We completed the game. Good job, everyone.
We somehow made that segment work. Look, we filled for approximately 5 to 10 minutes.
Excellent.
Yeah, Andy Houghton, Dead of Spring, Dead of Summer, Dead of Autumn is.
Oh god, Scott Perkins with a super chat with like one more, not a board game, but as the new set is out, Infinity. Can you have a
Infinity
sequel to
plus one.
Infinity? Yeah,
Infinity plus one.
Pedantic buttheads. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your super chat, Scott Perkins.
Nathan Noah suggests Exploding Cats 2. Are there any left? I would go with Exploding Kittens 2. Picking up the pieces.
Nice.
Sorry.
Picking up the Mises.
Jenga 2. Block Party. I don't know.
Matt, you're pretty quick on these, I have to say.
Look, if there's one thing I can do, it's terrible puns on a deadline.
No, that's very true. With someone who gets help on headlines, Matt's pretty aces at this. Mine would be like the Clank. The Clank series is just different onomatopoeias. You can do bonk, honk.
Bonk,
Great.
yeah. I feel like bonk is the 18 rated.
Clank after dark. It's bonk.
Oof. Spicy.
Okay, shall we move over to email questions?
Let's
and
do that.
questions from the chat also. If you have a question for the Dicebreaker podcast, you can reach us at podcast@dicebreaker.com, or if you're in the chat live every Friday from 2 p.m. BST, you can just chuck it in the chat. We'll find it and we'll stick it in. Wills, would you like to read this one from Sam, please? Also known as a Rangerfall.
I must be in the wrong Google Doc because I can't see them.
You want me to take it?
Yeah, please, Chase.
In a recent Instagram post, Matt showed off his board game collection and how it fits neatly under his bed. How does the rest of the Dicebreaker team store their games? Do you have any games on display for a particular reason? I'm new to the hobby, so mine are stashed in our hutch and scattered around the house. If I could display a game, it would be Root because I love Kyle Farron's art style.
I feel like Root is definitely a wall-worthy.
So this
game.
genuinely was a question I had to answer quite recently because, as you'll know, I've moved, as you can tell from the different background. And Zoe's flat is way smaller than the one I was in. So I used to have a big, like, massive Kallax against the wall, like the biggest size they do, just full of games. So not only did I have to whittle down the ones that I didn't want to keep anymore, but even when I took them into the flat, we had to decide the ones that were going to stay out and the ones that were going to get shoved into the drawers that go under the bed. Because the bed has now gone up against the wall. So there were 2 drawers that just are not accessible. So, like, those are the things that I'm like, I need to keep these, but I'm probably not going to play them for the foreseeable future. So when it came to picking, I had this question in my head of, do I keep out the ones that look the best? Because then I can put the pretty ones on the shelf. Or do I keep out the ones that I think I'm going to need the quickest access to? And that was genuinely a bit of a conundrum. So things like Root and Azul, for example, I've kept out because they look fantastic. But there are a few games where I'm just like, this is really ugly, but I want to play it all the time. So I'm going to have to just leave it on the shelf. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, for me, I guess to answer the question, and this is sort of like banging on the last podcast a couple weeks ago where y'all got a question about like storing them vertically or horizontally, right? I do mine horizontal. I've got enough, and I've got enough space that I do them horizontally because I don't want that mess. And also we build sort of like little ziggurats out of them. So like, you know, you find the bigger one to become the bases and then you just go up in size. So there's no real theming going on there, but it's all architecturally sound.
I was not on that podcast, but I do just want to point out that when you do the ziggurat, you have the issue that you can buckle the lids of the lower board games. So I would be careful about that. You talk about mess, but you've never had a ripped case.
That's a fair point. So ours are not too big, and we do take weight into consideration as well. So this was very carefully considered. So every time we get a new board game, everything has to be like redone. And I know that there's probably a point where like this will no longer be a viable option. But for now, the ziggurat solution is in play.
Nice. As Sam said, I put that picture up on Instagram because my wife and I are looking to move house soon. And so we went through all the board games. Because when we moved in here, we have one of the beds that lifts up. I think they're called Ottoman beds. And we said, okay, this is where all the board games will live. We'll limit ourselves to this space. And then, of course, being in the job that I'm in and also being the person I am, That rule quickly went out the window, and we had board games behind the door. Behind me, we had board games up on top of the bookshelf. I think people that have watched past streams may have seen like Twilight Imperium and stuff up there, where it's like, I want to keep these, but I have no space for them anywhere else. So, we went through and we were quite harsh. We really did cut down. We got rid of some kind of classics that we just realistically don't play anymore, like Catan and Carcassonne. We've had for decades, or 10 years plus, and so it was just like, we don't really play these anymore. We've replaced them, so we gave them away to a friend who works with an organization for children, and it was an interesting process, because when you're limited by space rather than a box count, it's like, okay, is one Twilight Imperium realistically worth 4 other quote standard sized games? And it's like, I had Eclipse, which is another massive space game that takes 6 hours to play, and Twilight Imperium, and was kind of weighing them up like, these are roughly the same box size, they're both roughly the same kind of theme, they may play slightly differently, and both are about as unrealistic to get a group of people together to play. So I can only keep one, and was having to really make decisions like that, like curating a collection of, okay, do we have a social deduction game? Yes, we have Deception, so we probably don't need the Resistance or something like that. Do we have a hidden movement game? Yes, we have this, so we don't need space. Going through and curating both by size and by style, and hoping that if we're in the mood for something particular, we can pull out something that we know we love and are interested in playing. But I don't really have many games on display. I have RPGs on my bookshelf. I have a Root poster, but I don't have board games out anymore anyway. So I feel like miniatures.
Miniatures, I was just about to say, are a whole nother issue, because I've got quite a few now, like showpiece models that I'm really proud of, that I'd like to keep out and have on display. So when I moved in, we put them on top of the wardrobe in the bedroom, because there wasn't really anywhere else to put them, so they just sort of sit up there and they look quite cool. Recently, Toto and Rosie have decided that they like sleeping on top of the suitcases on top of the wardrobe. Nice. And I have had, due to the enormous cat that he is, Toto jumping up on there and then like very, very sloppily getting back down again. I have had both of the little ghosts that attach to Lady Ollander snap off now, because it's knocked on the floor. And genuinely, like, I think if he broke the massive Skaven demon that I've painted, I think I would be in tears. Like, that is one of like my proudest achievements as a model painter. If he knocked that on the floor and cracked it in half, I would just not want to look at him for the rest of the week. So I'm now having to find a different place to put those, because we just can't stop them going up there. But yeah,
do you think it's time to invest in one of those glass cases?
Huh? I just got showered out. I don't know why. Yeah, it's like a bell jar or something, What are you shouting about?
Lady Ollander.
Yeah, I know.
She broke.
I know. We're live, Zoe. Zoe's really upset about it as well, because I painted Lady Ollander for her. But yeah, it's a nightmare having cats around anything, but miniatures are so fragile. So yeah, maybe bell jars, maybe something along those lines, just kind of figure something out. But we've got some new shelves arriving, so I'm hoping that they won't like jumping on those. We'll see.
That's a forlorn hope, Wheels, man.
I know.
All right, shall we close out with this one? Wheels, if you've got the document open now, would you like to read this top one from Kate Collier, please?
Kate Collier says, what's the oldest PC/console/board game that each of you still play? Mine would be the original Bard's Tale trilogy. Good question. A lot of like games I will play for nostalgia's sake. Like playing, I know Skate was only like 2007, but still like quite a while ago. And it's hilarious, by the way, listening to all of the like lingo that they use in that game. It's like listening to like guys trying to be cool in 2007 is very funny.
Oh my god, that's me. I can relate. I was trying to be cool in 2007.
2007, still the best video game year to have ever happened. Like, there's never been a year that had that many good games come out since.
Yeah, 2007's pretty strong.
2007 was incredible. Halo 3, Skate, Bioshock,
well, right?
ridiculous, yeah. Yeah, the 7s apparently are just outrageous. I don't know if I'd say the same for 2017. I'll have to have a look. But I think the oldest game, pardon me, that I still play quite a lot, probably on an emulator, is like probably like the PS1 games that I used to play as a kid, like Soul Reaver, stuff like that. Something that I know I'm always forced to, even though I don't think I actually enjoy it that much, I'm always forced to play because my friends love playing it as a throwback, is Age of Empires 2. Because that is like one of those games where it's just like, oh, let's play Age of Empires 2. And I'm like, yeah, great. Because there's this one friend that we have called Daniel Piggins, who has only played Age of Empires 2 since it came out. It's the only video game he's ever played. So he's just like immortal in that game. It is like you've built like 2 houses and he's already in the Imperial Age, and it's just like I don't understand how you do this. Like I expect him to be in like one of those, I don't know, like Korean esports leagues or something. Like he's ridiculous. He's so talented at it. I'm just like, I don't want to play against you.
I wish I could be one of those people. I would be a much wealthier person if I could just buy one video game and be fine playing that for the rest of my entire life, you know?
You say that, but there are a lot of people like that who play like League of Legends and then spend their entire life's worth savings on skins.
Gosh. Yeah.
Chase, is there anything you keep going back to?
Yeah, so I guess my answer is sort of a cop out in a little bit. I own the D&D Gamma World that came out in like 2010. And after playing that with some friends, I got really interested in Gamma World and went back and like downloaded some of like the documents of the older versions, which stretch back to the 70s. I think the earliest I was able to find back in college when I get into it was like the 80s. I was just looking at the versions, like maybe 3rd edition, which came out in 1986. And I will still sometimes, like, if I've got a friend who's interested, we'll just sort of like mess around, because back in college, what I did is I kind of homebrewed this like post-apocalyptic version of our college town. And we played Gamma World in that. And that was enough of a lark that like I'll still do that with friends, and we'll just sort of, wherever we're living at the time, we'll just sort of create a post-apocalyptic version and play some Gamma World there. So that's the board game version. The other games, like video games and stuff like that, yeah, with emulation, this is an easy answer. Like I'll go back and play, like I'm right now playing Chrono Trigger again on my phone.
Oh, nice.
If there are any lawyers listening, I do legally own the game and therefore are taking part in my legal right to emulate this game on another system.
I'm not. I'm fully pirating them. Lock me up. I don't care. I've played like Baldur's Gate 2 about 100 times as well. Like I think there are a lot of games that like I just played them when I was 12 or whatever. So they'll just never stop being fun to me.
Yeah. I mentioned recently I had recently started replaying the first Final Fantasy, so that's what 88, I think. I fairly let's say semi-annually replay Final Fantasy 9 because it's my favorite and it's the best one of the series. Obviously, my wife and I did a run of like most of the Final Fantasies, so we did like 7 through 10, and now we're doing 1 through 6, and we did the Kingdom Hearts.
You stopped before 10-2.
We did start at 10-2, but we didn't actually finish 10-2 because we got distracted.
Which is the one with I'm Captain Bosch, because that's one of the only ones I've bothered to play.
I believe that's 10.
Is that 10? Yeah.
10 is the first one with voice acting, so with Tidus.
Yeah.
And the laughing, the scene, yeah.
No. That's teach us how to blitz. That's that one's awful. I'm talking about the one where you're in like a sort of desert town. It's way more fantasy.
Way more fancy. Oh, I don't actually.
Your main character is a guy in like a vest, and he's topless apart from it. He's got like a sash, and he's running around shouting, "I'm Captain Bosch" at some point. I don't know. 11. I don't know.
11 was the MMO.
That's 11.
Oh, is it 11? Wow,
yeah,
really?
14's the MMO, isn't it?
And 14. Anyway.
No, sorry, not 11. 12.
12.
I can't look at Roman numerals correctly.
Yeah, 12. The one with Fran. People cosplay her a lot. Yeah. That's one of the only ones I bothered to play. And 8 I played a lot as a kid because it was the one that we had on our PS1.
Yeah, but I also play a lot of Tetris. Like I love Tetris. So I think that probably is the oldest game that I go back to on a very regular basis. Like I just absolutely love Tetris. I don't know what it is about it. I think it's just one of those. Again, it's like obviously the best video game of all time, right? Like it's like so obvious that it's hard to actually counteract it. It's just brilliant. Board game wise, I don't know really. Like I don't play loads of older stuff because of this job, so I tend to keep up with newer stuff just by virtue of Betrayal is a game we go back to quite a lot. That's 2004, I think. That's probably it. Like Netrunner I like, which is old. Actually, Netrunner doesn't count. Android Netrunner, because it's newer. But
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, Magic, right? Like, I don't play with old Magic cards, but
Yeah.
I play Magic occasionally, and that has been going forever.
In the Magic tutorial video that I put out, I accidentally said that Magic comes from the 80s rather than 90s. But like it feels like it does. Do you know what I mean? Like this game has been running since 1947 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess if you're being pedantic, like my wife and I play chess occasionally, so really that wins by a country mile. And we tried getting into Go because I'd never really played Go. So like sometimes I'll just try out those kind of like capital T traditional games.
Yeah. I mean, Viking chess for me and Zoe was
Nefeltafel.
Nefeltafel, yeah.
Nefeltafel, that's it. Yeah. I think it's interesting to see where that stuff it's like King Domino, right? It's like someone takes a traditional game and gives it a modern theming and update.
It's just difficult to play old board games in the way that you would old computer games or any other sort of like digital media. It's just like that's something I think about sometimes, is like curation for this hobby is got to be just a rough state, you know?
Out of print games, Tigris and Euphrates from '97. Like, it's so hard to get now, but it's an incredible game.
Well,
and I think they've even taken it off of they've taken it off of the App Store and stuff like that, so you can't even play it virtually, which obviously is an even more accessible route for many people who can't afford 400 quid for an out of print copy. Yeah, it's one of the things about the industry that, particularly with Kickstarters, limiting things to sometimes single print runs, and if you don't cough up for a Kickstarter, you miss out. It's FOMO, right? It drives a lot of the industry as it stands.
And how can we forget about Crocodile, of course?
Actually, Crocodile probably, yeah. That's Crocodile, the goat of board games. The Tetris of board games. All right, I think that's about all we have time for on this week's podcast. Thank you all for your questions. Thanks to those in the chat. If you'd like to join us, we are live every Friday from 2 p.m. BST, where we do this again. We chat about stuff and we answer questions. Wheels, are you projecting? Am I seeing that, or is that going out on the live?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's fine.
No,
don't
so
worry.
It's on that. Just a bit of Excel spreadsheet for you.
Well, I was preparing for you to ask me what's coming up on the channel, but opened it up on the wrong window. So please enjoy a brief look at behind the scenes of what my computer looks like.
But of course, thank you, Chase, for joining us. If you'd like to read more of Chase's work, you can find it over on dicebreaker.com. And if folks want to follow you on Twitter, Chase, you're at
Chase Writes.
Chase Writes. And indeed you do, very much so. Of course, Wills, thank you for being here once again.
You're very welcome, and please do stick around here on youtube.com/Dicebreaker for more content that's upcoming, including a Let's Play of the Pokemon trading card game for the first time on the channel tomorrow.
Nice.
And on Sunday, you can watch me and Matt play Hive, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that was a good fun one, actually. Yeah. It was good to go back to that.
Can I just say, Orangafall, it is a lovely spreadsheet. Thank you very much. I worked very hard on it. It's a beautiful spreadsheet.
Well, the spreadsheet was so good that I actually just copied it for my own editorial schedule, because I was like, Will's has done all the hard work color coding this. I'm just going to rip it off.
Smart.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I don't know what I was going to say now. We're at the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening. You can find us on dicebreaker.com, youtube.com/dicebreaker. You can go check out some merch on the Repop merch store. You can find the link in the description below, hopefully. You can find us around the place at Join Dicebreaker. We'll be around, and we will be back next Friday at 2 p.m. BST live for another episode of the Dicebreaker podcast. But until then, enjoy the long bank holiday weekend if you're in the UK. Enjoy your weekend if you're anywhere else. Stay safe out there and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Bye.